My first love is Spider-Man from 2002. A quick logline: after being bitten by a genetically modified spider, a shy teenager gains spider-like abilities that he uses to fight justice as a masked superhero and face a vengeful enemy. Directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire, obviously, Willem Dafoe, and Kirsten Dunst. So yeah, this is my intro to her. I'd never seen anything of her, so I missed the entire sort of teenage
Hmm.
girl next door phase of her that you were talking about. So this was my first intro. I'd never heard of her before.
Did you
This is,
think did you know she was not a real redhead? Now I'm actually just genuinely curious now. Did that
I thought she was a redhead for the
Oh,
longest
cool.
time.
Wow, it worked. Okay.
It worked. So yeah, I mean, this is like, what a launch or intro to really anybody. And growing up in India, and this movie was huge, absolutely took over. And I guess just thoughts on her first and then the movie. Just rewatching it, I just was so surprised by the fact that she actually isn't a lot in the movie, even though in
Yeah.
my mind, she sort of felt like, oh, she's like, she's the co-lead. She's in the movie. She's one of the inspirations or instigators of what ensues because Tobey Maguire's character is in love with her, and
Hmm.
and then she's paired up with James Franco's character. So she's a very integral part of the story, but
Hmm.
also I think Jerry Maguire's coming of age, if you will. But she's not really there in the movie that much. So it was kind of kudos to her that she has such an amazing impact despite that. But I do remember watching the movie when I first watched it. I was okay on her, if I'm being very honest.
Hmm.
I wasn't, and this is also, Spider-Man, so like Toby and the special effects and just this, the scale of the movie sort of kind of overpowers and trumps everything. But I don't know, I sort of felt that, oh, she's always like unhappy. And, of course, bad things are happening. Her dad seems like an asshole. And, she's not having much luck with really anything. She's dating bad guys and making poor choices, but also doesn't have, the best sort of hand offered to her either. So, it just felt kind of boring to me. I
Hmm.
remember when the first time I watched it, even though she looks amazing and has like great coats and things, even though she's poor apparently. And of course, like the kissing scene is like iconic. And
Hmm.
there are like bright spots, and you really see that when she smiles back at him, when Tobey Maguire is Peter Parker and doesn't have much self-confidence, it really means something, not just to him but also to the audience, because she has such a power of saying that, oh yeah, I've noticed you, or your eyes are of this color versus what I thought. Like it really lands because she just has so much kind of power to her. But rewatching it, I sort of, liked her performance even more than what I did before as a young teenager or however old I was.
Hmm.
That she, again, like we were talking earlier, she has that kind of spunk in her and has so much, brightness to her. At the same time, she can balance that with a lot of sadness and a lot of kind of depth, without kind of, being like a scenery chewing kind of person. It's pretty subtle work, but it's all there essentially. And it's kind of amazing to see like how fully formed she is as an actress still at that young age. And she's doing all this in like a giant blockbuster movie, which is not something that people do now, especially in the MCU era, and now I guess the post MCU era. So pretty impressive overall. I just wish that they had more to do, or given her more to do in the movie, because
Hmm.
she's still, she's like the fourth person. I think I feel like Aunt May and Uncle Ben, they have more to do than her actually, even though they are probably in less of the movie.
I think they are saving more of the MJ Peter Parker stuff for the second movie is more about their
True.
relationship. So she's in a little bit more, because you're right. Like she's an instigator for him, and but she's more like a side character in
Yeah.
this movie, which I think she has enough energy and presence that it works. And also, the MJ role is a role where she is supposed to be like a girl next door, but have a lot of personality, a lot of
Mm.
spunk, and she definitely I think pulls that off really well here. I
Mhm.
I remember being shocked. I saw this at the time too. As a big comic book fan as a kid, and still am. So still am a comic book fan. Spider-Man wasn't always my favorite. We talked about Batman being my favorite superhero in a previous episode. But I always liked Spider-Man, and I think she did a great job capturing what MJ is supposed to be in terms of that
Mm.
personality and having that the confidence, but there's also like a vulnerability sort
And a
of wrapped in that
hesitation.
hesitation
Yeah.
because she does come from a poorer family too. She is failing at trying to be an actress in this film. I just remember too, like being so surprised that she was in this role because she was known as such a blonde. And MJ is
Mm.
obviously a redhead, and that was like
Mm.
really jarring to me when they cast
Oh
this. But
wow.
I do think she again did a great job in this. I think this movie's strengths are really in the characters and the relationships between especially the three friends is sort of the spine of the entire Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. That is what makes Spider-Man so interesting and great is because he's relatable as a character and you love him as a guy. Peter Parker as a person. And yes, there's cool superhero antics around it, but it really is about the character. I think that she brings a lot to that. I think Toby
Yep.
brings a lot to that. And Sam Raimi, to his credit too, is was really the perfect director, I think, to pull this off. A lot of his humorous sensibilities, his crazy camera moves and great editing and really comic book kind of style. Like when he's Tobey
Mm-hmm.
Maguire's making his suit, there's all these like superimposed of the different sketches he's doing, like all the stuff that Sam Raimi's been doing in all of his movies leading up to this it still works in this context of this giant big budget. You know, it was the number one movie of the year in 2002. Like it was really a phenomenon that really
Yeah.
blew the doors off everything. So I think, you know, she was a big part of that. And I think this is cool. This is like your first introduction to Kirsten Dunst. Again, not
I
knowing she was a
know.
blonde is really funny. That's crazy. Because for me, like she's always been just like this blonde
Mm.
star. So I guess
Mm.
kudos to the wig or hair dye people that you thought she was a natural redhead. That's
No,
awesome.
I totally bought it. But yeah, as the movie, just like rewatching it, I hadn't seen it in many years. I was just blown away by like how good this movie is.
It's
I'm
so fun.
not typically a superhero movie person, but I think this is a movie. It just works on all levels, and I think you hit the nail on the head that it works because it's about the relationship and the characters are so deep, and also I think the coming of age part of it, which could literally be in any movie, is handled so beautifully. Also the introduction to the world building and the exposition of how this works and how does he become that, like that's all captured through a coming of age lens, which is just
Hmm.
so genius and so fun. Like I never get tired of it, versus in any other movie I'm like, if you start with Bruce Wayne's parents getting shot,
Oh
I will
yeah.
leave the theater.
Right, right,
Or if
right.
you do any other origin stuff, I will I will not be happy. But this, I'm happy to watch that whole kind of how he comes into this over and over again. And
Hmm.
that's because of Sam Raimi, how they wrote it. And I think the casting is just perfect. Like in my mind, Tobey Maguire is the best Spider-Man, will
Yeah.
always be.
Hmm.
And that's sort of perfect. And then the comic book quality of it. And even though CGI and such was not that advanced in that time, but the movie looks great. And
Hmm.
apart from I guess Green Goblin, like that feels not so great now. That said, Willem Dafoe definitely brings it. I mean, there's a lot of ham acting
He's
happening,
so good. Yeah.
but he's so good. Like
He's-
I think you need that. And that
yeah.
also is kind of genius that on one hand, you have really like grounded performances from Kristen Dunst and Joey Maguire. But then you definitely have like sort of more louder performances, Green Goblin, James Franco, even Aunt May and Uncle Ben,
Hmm.
they're sort of hamming it up as well. I think it feels intentional to me.
Oh,
Like,
100%.
you
Yeah.
need that for this to kind of literally pop out of the pages of a comic book, but then also have something meaningful and real. And that's why there is that emotional connection. Otherwise, you wouldn't care. I
Right.
certainly wouldn't care. So it's like a perfect movie, a perfect superhero movie. It just made me think that we didn't know how good we had it, or I guess we knew, but now even more so.
It's a classic. I mean, I think the best comparison to me just in the superhero genre would be like the Superman, the Richard Donner Superman movie.
Yeah,
This is like the an updated version of that. Like when I was
yeah,
in college seeing Spider-Man, I was like, oh, this must have been what it would like to see the Christopher Reeve Superman movie back in
yeah.
the 70s. Like that type of capturing the character perfectly and the energy and the fact that it was such a big phenomenon. Just a great film. Really, that whole trilogy. I'll even stand up for Spider-Man 3. Maybe we've already covered Spider-Man 2 actually in an earlier episode about
Yeah.
New York. Maybe one day we'll reach the point where we'll cover Spider-Man 3. I think has a lot
Yeah,
to offer and it's still unfairly maligned in my opinion.
I agree. I signed up for that movie too, actually, because it does tie a lot of loose ends and
Hmm.
such. So I remember liking it when it came out, even.
Hi there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I review a new release and then discuss 6 other movies made by that film's actor or director and how they shaped us. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.